Good morning, and welcome to Many Paths, Many Visions, brought to you by the Labyrinth Society and with your host, Christiana Brinton. Today, my guest is the well-known Portland, Oregon Sacred Sites leader, Ordained Interfaith Minister, founder and director of Anam Cara Connections, and recent TLS Gathering Workshop presenter, Kathleen Verigin. Jiagwich, Kathleen. Welcome to Many Paths, Many Visions. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, it's great to be here. So I will say back to you, Salcha, and that means welcome in Irish. So whoever's here, Salcha.
Great. So you just finished a very successful pre-gathering workshop late last month at Islandwood Eco Center on Bainbridge Island, where you unveiled your, and I'm calling it the Anam Cara Triple Spiral Labyrinth. I don't think that that's what you call it, but since that's the name of your company and your ministry, that's what I'm calling it. So, and a lot of people had never walked a triple spiral before. You had a very good turnout for your workshop. What was that experience like for you?
It's interesting you ask that because I was nervous. I'd not been, I've only been a member of the Labyrinth Society for a year, and I wasn't quite sure how something outside of the norm would be received at a conference. And I asked someone who often goes to these conferences that, are people going to get mad at me because this isn't a traditional labyrinth? Is it going to be laughed at? She was like, no. We are all excited about all different kinds of labyrinths. So that's what I went in with, Christiana. Oh no, is this going to be good? And my goodness, as soon as we rolled it out on canvas and just watching people watch, I was like, okay, we're going here today. It's good.
Great. That's great. Yeah, I think that you have come into the Labyrinth community at a time when it's just burgeoning, when people are taking labyrinths and building all sorts of interesting designs, really going with what is needed for the environment, for what they're doing with the labyrinth, for the whether it's private, whether it's prison, whether it's, whatever it might be, and really taking the central idea of what a labyrinth means and just creatively going with it. So I think it was a perfect time for you to do this. So on your website, and the website is anamcaraconnections.com. That's http:// Anam, AMCARA connections.com. You write, it is said that the divine always matches the dream and the dreamer. When the two consciously align the outcome, the third aspect is divine manifestation. So talk a little bit about, if you may, how did the manifestation of this labyrinth design come about for you?
Oh boy, we're going to go back a few years.
Okay.
So my first trip to Ireland was in 1998, and it was a year after my mother had passed, and my mother's name was Mary Kathleen Connolly McKern. And I grew up with all things Irish. We're Orange Irish, we're Protestants. But it was kind of embarrassing growing up, oh, Mom, please. And then in her dying process, she had said to me, my only regret is that I never got to go to Ireland. And I heard myself say, I'll go for you someday, and I'd like to take something of yours with me. So she gave me this goofy little leprechaun statue, and I went, okay, kind of put it in my pocket. And then I was there a year later when she was really declining in health. And she said, it wasn't the leprechaun, was it? I said, well, something a little more meaningful. But we really didn't get to talk about it because she died about 2 days later. So a year after that, on the 1-year anniversary of her passing, my husband and I were visiting Newgrange. It's about an hour north of Dublin in the beautiful, lush Boyne Valley in Ireland. Now, this is a place, Christiana, that is a massive, they used to say a burial tomb, but now they're saying more of a ritual site. It's where the light at the winter solstice comes up on the horizon, if it's full sun in Ireland, it'll come up on the horizon and go directly into this small window box and penetrate the tomb. And it goes, but first of all, it has to pass by a massive stone where some ancient people carved all these spirals, and there's one pronounced triple spiral. And I had known about the triple spiral, but until you're like facing it, I felt like it was alive. I mean, it felt like a labyrinth in that moment, actually. It was so alive, and I found my eyes kind of traveling one spiral and going to the other and then to the other above. Now, I didn't know we actually got to go into the tomb. So as we start to enter this very narrow passageway, now keep in mind, this was built well over 5,000 years ago. Newgrange predates the pyramids. It predates Stonehenge. So we go down this narrow stone, tight, and you come into from the passageway to the central tomb, and there are 3 alcoves. So here's this number 3 again, and I was just mesmerized by it. And you'd see the triple spirals etched throughout the ritual place. So in the very center of it, the guide said, we think this alcove over here was likely for the poorer people of the tribes because they only found bones, just bones. Now she said, now the alcove over here, she pointed to another alcove, was probably for the more royal wealthy class because they did find jewelry and pottery. And then she said, and the one at the top here, this alcove, was likely the one for the priest or priestess. And in my memory, she went priestess. And somewhere in my memory, I felt like it was being said right to me. So here I go to Ireland as a minister and come home like a priestess, like, whoa, what is this? Yeah. And I was absolutely vibrating in there. And I had a lock of my mother's beautiful white hair. I had the thought of sticking it inside, and I went, no, you do not tamper with these ancient sites. So we came out of the tomb. It was October. It was breezy and sunny, and I gave her hair to the wind. And I'll tell you, my life completely changed 19 years ago with that. And then I was able to go back about a year and a half later for a month by myself to really immerse myself in Celtic spirituality by interacting with people rather than reading it in a book. You know what I mean? Reading it, really going to ceremonies and meeting a former priest and his wife that are holding Celtic ceremonies. And she's got a baby on one hip and she's holding the chalice of the wine in the other hip. And it just was so rich. So that's where it really all began, was this fascination with the triple spiral. So let's see, that was 98. I went back in 2000, and then I came home and people started saying, oh, take us, do a group. So I did in 2002 with a friend, Joanne McCall. We put together an Ireland tour. And on that tour was a very nice woman named Lisa Steckley. And Lisa is very involved in Veritas and at the Cathedral in Chartres and so forth. So I got to watch her go into Newgrange for the first time, and I just love witnessing what people see. So I think Lisa got the triple spiral bug there at the same time. And if I remember correctly, Lisa is an engineer, so she has this ability to see shapes and how they fit together. I'm not quite that linear. I'm more on the other side of the brain. So we had come home, and I don't know the timing of it, but maybe within the next couple of years, we got together and she showed me a design for a triple spiral labyrinth. And I went, oh my gosh, how did you do that? Because it is not symmetrical. The real stone is not symmetrical, but she made this tri-symmetrical labyrinth on paper. So that was my first experience of just taking a pen or even my finger, and how we can walk a labyrinth virtually in that way. And I felt, Christiana, like I felt the first time I went into Newgrange and saw that triple spiral. It was like suddenly alive. And so with the creation of that, then whoa boy, a couple of years go by, and I was sitting alone on Inishmore, a little island off the west of Ireland at sunset, going, what is my life, God? I'm so empty. I had just left a church job and had just had a wonderful tour to Ireland. And I sat down and I started drawing the triple spiral. I just started drawing it. And out of it came this 9-month program, which is another conversation, of another a 9-month program for women, and we follow the triple spiral became like a blueprint for it, almost like trimesters. We could say it that way. And what the Anam Cara journey is about is claiming a dormant archetype. So we may be doing our art in the world, but have you really explored the archetype of the artist? So I say that because a labyrinth is an archetype, right? It carries energy and meaning and history, and we activate it. We bring our energy to it. So that might be a long way of saying yes. That's how that happens. Yeah.
And so the 9-month cycle. So each spiral was each spiral equaled 3 months. So that's 3, 6, 9. So that was sort of a part of that energy that you had this number 3 again in there. And each cycle was a 3-month cycle, and that equaled 9. And that's a very sacred number in the Buddhist tradition and many traditions. And besides the Celtic tradition.
Absolutely.
And so you had Lisa Steckley. So I know her very well from years ago with Veritas and Chartres. And she was one of the originals there, taking everybody around, and I remember her very well. I haven't seen her, and she was very active with the Trinity Episcopal Cathedral Labyrinth Guild as well. And when I settled in Portland from the East Coast, she was there still. But then now she's up on one of the islands, Orcas Island, or one of the San Juan Islands. Yeah,
she's up on the Orcas Island, and I let her know that I was going to the conference. So she said, "Tell people hi."
Yeah.
Well, so what happened then is Lisa drawing this, and she said, "I'm going to try to put it on like heavy paper. I don't know what that's called." So I don't know. A little bit of time goes by, and we get together, and she did this with a friend named Gail, and I cannot remember Gail's last name. So she may be a part of this Labyrinth group as well. So anyway, on this huge, heavy paper, there were 3 separate spirals, and then she had a way to tape them all together. And let me tell you, to look at that for the first time on paper was just absolutely stunning. And so Lisa and I did a workshop, and now this is probably 10 years ago, just kind of an experimental workshop. And we worked with the number 3 before leading up to actually walking the triple spiral labyrinth. We worked with the power of that number 3. And what that means to me is, and what was revealed to me in this 9-month blueprint, this program, is the first spiral to me spoke of courage. And when I say courage, it's the courage to stand alone in our own power. And sometimes when I say that, a woman will look at me and say, "But I don't want to be alone and lonely." Well, no, we don't. But when we stand alone in our own power, it's because we're deeply rooted and deeply connected. So that's, to me, what that first spiral was. I have to be in alignment with myself before I can move into these other areas. So we had the first spiral of courage, the courage to stand in my own power. And there's where we learn to be an Anam Cara, which, by the way, in Irish means soul friend, is we learn to be an Anam Cara to ourselves. It's like, especially as women, we don't put ourselves first. I was certainly raised that was selfish. And into my more moderate, mature years, I'm like, no, I do have to come first with this. So it's about the courage to stand in our own power, being an Anam Cara to ourselves. And then what was revealed to me is that it aligns with the physical body. Okay? So it's like when we walk that first spiral, we are coming into ourselves. I'm showing up in this labyrinth saying, okay, I have entered. And you walk into the center of the first spiral. And I always encourage people to pause for a moment. And then you walk out, and certainly it's going to lead you into the next spiral. And that spiral revealed to me was the spiral of creativity. And that's the creativity that happens when people interact one-on-one. So 1 on its own can't really create. 3 on its own, it can get complicated. But with 2, we can really relate and see the soul friend in the other person first and the personality second. And that's not easy to do, but that's my passion. That's my ministry. Can I see the soul friend first? So we come into the second spiral, And in the middle of it, then it's like, how do I relate to individuals one-on-one? And can I see the soul in them? And will I allow them to see the soul in me? And this one is about aligning with the mental body. So with meditation and so forth, we slow down our thinking, because really it is our thinking that keeps us separate. I have this belief that we are all one, and yet, you know, you're over there, Christiana, I'm over here, somebody's over there. But this is what connects us, the mind. And when we can slow it down and be present, okay? So then we go into that third spiral, and what was revealed and was quickly revealed that this is the spiral of community. It's the spiral where I can show up as an individual, and I know I can relate one-on-one, but now how do I relate to an entire group? Seeing the group, the container of the group, as an Anam Cara. So our example might be, here I am as an individual. Right now I'm interacting with you, Christiana, one-on-one, and yet with the Labyrinth Society, we're in community. And so that third spiral then aligns with the emotional body of our feelings. So I always use this analogy when ministers at churches ask me about this. And I said, you know, we tend to show up at churches or spiritual communities or even a Labyrinth walk and say, hey, here I am, meet my needs. We don't know what our needs are. We're not very skilled at seeing and understanding the needs of others, but yet we want to be in community. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So doing it in that order, and then of course it's always going to take you in and out. And this is what we discovered. We did the workshop twice, and again, this was probably 10 or so years ago. And the first time when it came to walking it, everybody went in, out, in, out, in, out, and then they completely reversed it like we would in a traditional labyrinth. The second time we offered the workshop, we gave them the permission to do that, or to simply do the first spiral, the second spiral, the third spiral, come to the center, meditate, receive a message, and then there's a pathway where you can walk out. And that's where it got a little tricky for me, since I'm not a labyrinth expert by any means, is this a true labyrinth? And that's something Lisa checked out with Veritas, with dimensions, with everything, that it was all sanctioned as a true labyrinth. So yeah, when we have a dream and we act on it, and I mean a dream that's really rooted, not just I want to be tall and skinny and a ballerina, but when we have those deep callings, then I do believe the dream is matched by the dream. The dream and the dreamer gets matched. And that's how I think this all came about, was seeing the triple spiral, going there with Lisa Steckley, Lisa coming back and kind of doodling, creating the blueprint, and then the labyrinth itself was just part of that whole process. And it would be interesting to go back and look if it happens like every 3 years or something.
Yeah.
Because that number 3 is very powerful.
Yeah. So how did it then morph from Lisa's heavy canvas one? Where did DC Donahue come in? Because then where did you get your actual design? Because Lisa had hers, but then as she contributed the original impetus, and then you did this stuff with her, but then DC Donahue actually helped create or draw the labyrinth that you're now using, or you used in the workshop for the gathering.
Yeah. So what happened there is Lisa and I hadn't talked in probably a couple of years, after she moved away, and she contacted me one day a few years ago and said, I'm not really using the labyrinth. Could I give it to you? And I'm like, what? Wow. I don't know what to do with this. And I was living in a condo, and it was this massive, long tube. So I thought how to get this on canvas. I was lucky at that point in time. I had some extra money, actually from a car accident. I went, let's put some money in this. And the money shows up when you want it. So I must have called the Labyrinth Society here in Oregon, and they gave me the names of a few people. DC was in Corvallis, just about an hour from me. So I emailed her, not knowing her. I didn't even know if she was a she or a he with D.C.
Yeah.
Donahue, but of course I love the Irish last name.
Yeah.
And she wrote back and said, I said, I understand you make labyrinths and blah, blah. And she wrote back and said, well, I'm really not doing that anymore. And so I sent her the image of the triple spiral, and then I have a 3 or 4 page essay I wrote about the creation of it. And she wrote back and she went, wow, maybe I'm ready to do another labyrinth. I think the triple spiral got her out of hiding for a little while.
You hooked her.
She did. Yeah, she sent me photos while this was happening. So she had the blueprint of it, and we decided the heavy paper one that Lisa originally made, it just was way too big. There were very few rooms we could get that in. And so I think she took out 1 or 2 circuits from each spiral to make it into a 24 by 24. Otherwise, you know what I'm saying? There are many rooms that you can rent and they won't fit something like that with people around it.
Yeah.
So she projected it, down onto paper with a projector, and then she started drawing it, and making the center is the hardest part with that one. And then after that, so she showed it to me. We went back and forth with photos, and then the next step then, when I saw it on paper personally first, and so then we took it to a company that makes sails for sailboats. Yeah. And that's how that happened. So, and then, so they made the Velcro that connects it, they did all that. Then she got it back, and then she drew, like in pencil or something, the actual triple spiral. So after that, then, on a very hot summer night a couple of years ago, one of the churches I'm affiliated with had a big outdoor area. So actually they had a big room we could put it in. So my husband and I painted it, and we chose teal and purple, and partly just because I like them. And I like the tea and the kind of the teal, like the earth and sky mixed, and purple is kind of this royal whatever. So my husband went around first, just kind of with a brush, like boom, 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 boom. And I went over it then with a much lighter color with a sponge. So it's I wanted it to be a little mushy, not strict lines, and be a little mushy with that. And I remember this was so great. At one point he goes, "Oh no." I went, "What?" He said, "I spilled paint right in the middle of it. I'll get it up." And I said, No, leave it. That's the mistake. That's the imperfection of it. And even now when I walk it and I see that dab of paint, I smile because I'm a work in progress. I'm not perfect, So that was the birth of it. And then we debuted it, we premiered it at a fundraiser for my nonprofit, Anam Cara Connections. And to watch other people walk it, Christiana, was just, I don't know, is it like seeing your child ride a bike for the first time? Or, it just, it was kind of like my baby, And then we had 2 couples that had brand new babies. And I asked if one of the parents would carry the baby. So 2 dads from 2 different families walked the labyrinth holding, floppy little newborns, maybe just a couple of weeks old. And I love the fact that it was a man walking it, holding a baby. Certainly many people walked it, but that really stuck with me, of the innocence of the baby, the innocence of creation, the innocence. Every time I walk a labyrinth, I bring my innocence to it and hopefully receive some sort of maturity or experience my own growth as the outcome of doing that. So that was the creation of it. So
the type of canvas, it's a fairly thin canvas.
Well, it's heavy. I can't tell you the exact heaviness of it, right. But it can be folded in such a way that it fits in one of those big Rubbermaid tubs.
Okay.
We made it on purpose so it didn't have to be in a tube or something. So it's a sail on a sailboat, that kind of heaviness.
Right.
And yet flexibility of the canvas.
And so what it looks like when it's out is not a complete 24-foot square piece of canvas. What you've done is two of the spirals are at one end, so it's 24 feet across. Then it's like 12,
right.
6, 12, 12, 12, 6, 12, all the way around, because you had that third spiral that you Velcro onto the larger piece of canvas to equal the triple spiral.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. It's two pieces.
Right.
And, the Velcro part of it, the first time we used it, the Velcro ripped. So we had to take it back and make it a little sturdier. But it was also a good lesson for me is that when we put it out and put it to rest, that we have to do it very carefully, and to treat it with this incredible respect with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all those numbers, what do you think? 3,
Well,
6,
I wanted
9,
to see.
9, 6, 6.
First of all, what kind of paint did you use for the lines? People want to know. People want to know this. They want to know what you use, what type of utensils, because this year, when I have these kind of shows, I see it as inspiration for others doing things in their own countries or in their own communities.
Mm-hmm.
So, what kind of paint did you use for the lines?
It just was a very simple acrylic paint.
Okay. And what were the utensils that you used? You said you sort of did this soft, spongy thing on top of whatever your husband did.
Yeah, the first layer of paint was, he did it with a brush, kind of a small, maybe 1.5 inch wide brush, paintbrush. And of course, it's not easy to do. I mean, he would sit and do it. And I found I had to stand or kind of squat. It was not an easy task to paint that, because we needed to get it all painted that night so it could stay inside overnight and dry, and then we could pick it up the next morning before church. So anyway, he used the brush. Now, I'll be honest, when I walked in the room and saw where he started, I kind of went, that's not what I wanted. And, married couples do this all the time. I said, that's not, to me, it started to look like little DNA strands, kind of this like, splat, splat, splat. Something like that. And I said, well, I'll go over it with the lighter with the sponge. So we just got, those heavy sea sponges. I don't know what you call them. Those not kitchen sponges, those round, thick ones.
Yeah.
And then I had a much lighter color. So I had my own little bucket. And then I went back over, I followed him a ways. He did the first spiral before we let it dry a little bit for me to come in. And then I just kind of dabbed like right, left, right, because I didn't want it to be perfect, and it wasn't going to be perfect anyway. I wanted the lines to kind of bleed a little bit, so that's what the sponge, and again, I'd kind of go right, left, right, left, right, left, and it creates this kind of mottled color. The walking area is very narrow. I would say if there's any disappointment, it's because it's very narrow. But when you have a labyrinth of that size, it pretty much had to be that. And then in the center, when it was created, in my ideal world, there would be a much bigger center. Like Lisa's labyrinth on heavy paper had a beautiful, almost triangle, triple spiral thing in the very center, where like any labyrinth where you can sit and meditate or read or do something. But my labyrinth doesn't really create space for that. And you can have your little disappointments over those things, but I'm the type of person who says, no, this is what happened. Let's get the message of what happened. And I think for me, we don't stay there. We don't, that we're always moving back to the first spiral. We're always going into the second and the third in life. This is what we do in life.
Yeah.
So yeah, just simple acrylic paint. It dried overnight perfectly, so we could, but you'd want it indoors, obviously. And it was summer, so it was warm, so that might have helped. But yeah, having a place where you can lay it, really lay it out. And it's, I like the colors. I like it. We did it a year ago. I took the labyrinth to a shelter at a park near our house, and some like 2 teenage girls, I don't know, with a puppy, or a dog, came walking by, and I said, would you like to walk the labyrinth? Well, they had no idea what a labyrinth was, and we got to talk about it. And she said, well, what about my dog? And I said, are his paws muddy? And she goes, no. So the dog followed her in the labyrinth. It was so sweet. Now, he roamed a little bit too, but I don't know if you noticed when you walked it in Bainbridge Island, somebody said to me, there are dog prints on your labyrinth. And I went, yeah, there are. Everybody likes it. Everybody likes it.
Yeah. I mean,
that number, and I look at with 6, boiling it down to the 6, which of course is divided by 2.
Well, wait,
and
Kathleen, wait a minute. I have to go back. Hold on to that. Just hold on. I want to know. Tell me what the comments were from DC and Lisa with this labyrinth design and contributing to this labyrinth, because that I really liked. I liked that. That was very interesting to me. Because, as you said, DC hadn't been involved with making labyrinths in a while. So, what was her experience? What did she tell you about that it was like?
Oh, she fell in love with it. She felt the magic of it. She liked the challenge of it. This is not your traditional thing. And when she walked it, she said, or even working with it was like she was working with a live thing. This labyrinth was alive, and she was giving air to it by creating it, giving the breath to it. But yeah, she was quite moved by it. Now, Lisa has not seen it or walked it.
Oh, okay.
I just better get her back here to Portland and have her do that.
Yeah, or take it up to her island retreat there. I think she's
got... we talked about that.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I fiddled around with these numbers because I was fascinated because, you have the length is 24 feet, but then you have each side is 12 feet. Then it goes in half of that distance, 6, then up one side 12, over 12, 12, down 6, 12, and that equals 96, which equals 15, which equals 6. And so I found that very interesting that it was 2 of the 3 aspects of this triple spiral archetype. And so I went online and I fiddled around, and there's lots of information out there about sacred geometry and the number 6 and the number 7 and the number 5. But so I just looked some of this up, and it's about connecting with a higher self, inviting the sacred feminine to fill the safe and sacred space with her flowing energy. It's very interesting. It's she or this person, Gisela, I don't know her last name, but it relates it to the Merkaba and spirit.
Oh, the Merkaba.
Yeah, Merkaba, chariot spirit. And that it's blending this. The sacred masculine rotates clockwise, creating a white hole vortex. The sacred feminine rotates counterclockwise, creating a black hole vortex. When they spin simultaneously, 2 spirals occur, resulting in something truly magnificent, transformation. Which I just thought was really interesting.
Very interesting, because you're right. We go in and out 3 different times.
Yeah.
And to blend, as we say, the masculine, feminine, above, below, however we want to call that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I looked up 6 and just one very brief look, and it said it relates to Gaia, to Mother Earth, the number 6, and that it's a symbol of hearth and home. And one of the things, when I have people walk, I ask them later if they want to share their experience of it. And many people say when they get to the center, they feel like they've come home. And I think that's true probably for every labyrinth. And yet by doing the 3 instead of just, circuit in, circuit out, it kind of stirs everything up. It's not just left brain or right brain. And that's what I love about the triple spiral is, to me, it's a blueprint for possibility. Because duality is either or, you, me. And I remind myself there's always a third option. And the quote from, was it Rumi? Out beyond ideas of right and wrong, there's a field. I'll meet you there.
Yes.
And I love that. To me, that captures the triple spiral.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah. So
I'm just wondering. I'm really wondering. I gotta say, because she talks about the six being a six-pointed polygon, and it's constructed by overlaying two equilateral triangles. Well, the upright triangle represents the sacred masculine, the inverted triangle, sacred feminine. Blended together, there is now a balance of complementary yet oppositional forces. In this state, movement ceases, like finding stillness at a center point. In this state, there is equilibrium, inner peace, love, and harmony. In this state, creation naturally occurs. So, it's to me like what is might be to me, and I'm making this mean stuff. I'm definitely making this mean stuff. I will totally cop to that. But I find it very interesting that DC, that and you being in Newgrange, that it's very much alive. This triple spiral form and design is very alive, and this aliveness might just be what is needed now with this idea of balancing the masculine and feminine, and
yeah.
and creation happens out of this balance, and is what, I don't know about you, but that's what it feels like is happening on this planet right now. So I just find this all fascinating, that this was called, you were called to do this, that the energy it's a very alive design, a very archetypal design, and that these are the characteristics of this particular design that you created on this canvas. I mean, there's no accidents here. The labyrinth,
Oh, absolutely.
there's no accidents to me.
Well,
So,
and you're reminding me too that with out of duality can come creation.
yeah,
But as we're experiencing in our country and around the world, we're getting farther apart, and I believe that I have a friend in Ireland who's what's called a hedge witch, which means an herbalist.
mm-hmm.
But I remember him saying, "Oh, I lost my train of thought there." That the masculine, the feminine, the two coming together. Oh, I know. So it's like when I have a dream, and spirit creation brings the dream, matches the dream and the dreamer. Mm-hmm. So we have issues on our planet right now of extreme separation, mm-hmm. and so tools are going to emerge to help us address that and integrate it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That I know the herbalist would say, one of my groups, she was with us and she got nettles on her hands. She was leaning on the grass and got nettles. And people were like, "Oh no, what do we do?" And my witchy friend went over and got some leaf or something. And he said, the antidote is always nearby. Mm. For whatever is going to, hurt you or get you or make your skin rat, there's something growing nearby that will be the antidote to that. So, and I'm not saying the triple spiral labyrinth is the antidote to separation, but I do believe it's emerging. Somebody just sent me a photo the other day of another triple spiral labyrinth. Mm. A few years ago, I really thought I had the only one possible.
Yeah.
That's how grandiose I was.
Yeah.
And so I looked up on the internet and it said triple spiral labyrinth, and I went, "Oh, there's a woman in Ireland that has one on her land."
Yeah.
And so it's getting out there.
Yeah, and I know Tony Christie, and whenever he comes, and the guys who like making the temporary labyrinths very often make triple spirals, temporary ones on the grasses at the gathering. But let's talk about that workshop that you did. So when I walked the labyrinth in the room, and there was a lot of people there. It was a bit crowded. It was a good turnout. So I didn't, it was. It wasn't a time to just be there and reflect within each circle. But I still loved walking it. I loved walking it and getting to the center. And I think I just walked straight out because I was also trying to take some pictures at the same time.
Yeah.
But I did love your workshop because you had us all pick cards in the beginning that showed many different types of drawings of triple spirals. So can you talk a little bit about the process of creating this workshop? And had you ever done a workshop along with using the labyrinth before? Your labyrinth?
Yeah, I have, but I think it was a year ago in California somewhere. I did that workshop. My husband and I just moved a year ago to a rural property, so I kind of took a little gap year in there, and so it was beautiful to get the Labyrinth House for the first time in a year at the conference. So the triple spiral, as I said, it's a symbol, and nobody really knows what it means. The first guide that I had in Ireland, she said, it might be a sun wheel. Now remember, the sun on the darkest night of the year and that sunrise penetrates this tomb that's over 5,000 years old, and it has to pass over that triple spiral. It's like the triple spiral is standing guard, And I've been in there, 15 times now in the center of the site. And I've had some dark meditations in there, Christiana. We don't know what people really did. And I love the guides in Ireland that will say, it might be this or it might be that. We don't know. And so that's why I think it's opening up to my own personal interpretation of it. So before a workshop, before I explain anything or any of that, I want you to visually see a triple spiral. And I just love Google. You Google images, triple spirals, and there are dozens and dozens and dozens. So we had 30 different triple spirals. Plus, it's fun, isn't it? Just to pick one and, ooh, this is the one I got. Mm-hmm. And if I remember right, we worked with that you would receive some messages throughout the workshop and write it on the back of that.
Yeah.
It's to show, after we all went around, and wasn't it fun to see people's expressions like, oh, because we did it one at a time because we wanted to really see the initial reaction, your initial response to what you just pulled.
Yeah.
But the point of it is that there are many interpretations. And today I'll be giving you some of mine, and I want to hear what some of yours are. So yeah, that's how the workshop came together. Now, you also might remember I have people get up and kind of walk, like 1, 2, 1, 2. So everybody's walking around the room. Remember, 1, 2, 1, 2. Then I had to stop, and I said, now do a waltz step, just a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then I said, now march, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Now waltz, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And listeners, and you may even feel that right now as I say it, but I wanted people to feel in their bodies what our world is about right now is that first one, 1, 2, 1, 2. Would you say, if we've got like 2 eyes and 2 hands and everything is 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And yet when you bring in that third, people will say, it feels like I'm flowing. Yeah. And that there's a different way to look at what's happening in my life right now. I do this with my mentoring clients when someone's having a difficulty deciding or something, and we get out one of the paper triple spiral labyrinths, and I have that person, I leave them alone for a little while, and they travel it with their pen, and then whatever information they get out of it. And it invariably, it brings us to wholeness, which is about coming home. It is about home and hearth. So yeah, we've used it in many ways. Here's a funny one I want to get in if I can. I did a tour to Ireland a few years ago, and we were staying at a farmhouse B&B somewhere up around Sligo, the northwest-ish area. And the woman of the B&B welcomed us, and she said, "Oh, Kathleen, I loved your website, and I hope you don't mind, but Father Ian's going to stop by tonight. He'd like to meet you." And Christiana, I'm not even Catholic, and I was nervous. Like, priest is coming. I've done something wrong. So here's this delightful man, maybe 40-ish, his little priest thing, and he had his hands behind his back, and we're just chatting. And he said, "So tell me about this Anam Cara and the triple spiral." And I said, "Well, Father Ian, out near the coast, there's a Catholic church, a new one, and it has triple spirals everywhere, like on the furniture, the floor, the altar. And I just found it interesting that a Christian-ish Catholic church would have such a pagan symbol. And he said, no, Kathleen, it's the Sligo cross. Sligo is a county in Ireland. And so they have usurped the triple spiral as their cross. And I said, well, and for me, it's a more fluid form of the Trinity. And he leaned forward and said, Kathleen, the Trinity is fluid. And I said, oh, boy, this is where right out of my mouth came, I know that when I was a little girl sitting in church, staring at a dead man bleeding on a cross, and I was told it was my fault, and I had to pray to him, I got scared. And when I came into the triple spiral, I had a different experience of the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it. And he paused and he says, I get that. And then he said, now next year with your group, let me know, because he's in a tiny village and there's a Catholic church, an Anglican church, and then kind of like Baptist or something. Well, Father Ian calls them together once a year for a tri-service, 3 different, very different communities coming together for a prayer circle. So a year later, I say to the B&B lady, how's Father Ian, blah, blah, and she writes back and says, oh, Father Ian fell in love and got married and left the priesthood. I have this feeling that the triple spiral got him, Christine. The triple spiral got him. By the way, Lisa, Tony Christie, Moya McGinty up in the Sligo area, we want to see the triple spiral labyrinth on the land somewhere Newgrange, somewhere in the future, because that center tomb is now, they're roped off. You can't go into those alcoves. And pretty soon they're going to close the center of the tomb because our bacteria are, we're eroding this airtight, perfect ritual site. So we want to get that triple spiral on the land in Ireland at Newgrange.
So do you think, is this public land? I mean, is that going to be an impossibility, or nothing's impossible if the labyrinth wants to get built there? But
Exactly. Well, the mound itself is kind of on a slope, so I'm not sure about that. But when you stand at the entrance to Newgrange, and if you look across of where the sunrise would be at winter solstice, there's a field, a farmer's field, right below Newgrange. Now that farmer's field already has a tomb on it. Now I don't think the public goes there, but I have an eye on, and that would just be a little stop off the road, because you take these little mini buses out to the actual site, and that people can have an experience of walking it once you can't go into the middle of it. So yeah, there are a couple of friends in Ireland that we're going to get together one of these days and going, one of them says we should just go at night and do it. I'm like, as rebel as I am, I want permission.
Stealth labyrinth building. I've heard of that. I've heard of that, the movement, and it's very hush hush. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah.
Well, that's so. I understand that this is true for all the caves in France and Newgrange and so on, that it's just becoming difficult to have hordes and hordes of people going through there. So, but you think it's going to happen fairly soon?
Well, that's my dream. And remember, divine matches the dream and the dreamer.
Yeah.
And then I have a friend also up in Sligo who has 3 labyrinths on his property, and now one of them is the triple spiral.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you think that the Newgrange is going to be prohibiting visitors this year or this next year, or
no, I don't know how. I don't know how soon. It's just a rumor I've heard when I've been there that and I've seen it at some other sites in Ireland where we used to be able to go like sit on the stone and meditate. That it's all roped off now and there's a guard, and I see both sides of it. Is they do need to protect it. I used to take garbage bags with me and pick up cigarette butts and beer cans from like really holy sites, and so but there's a beautiful visitor center at Newgrange where you see a film. They kind of mimic what the solstice looks like. I want to say in January 2008, I got up in the middle of the night because they were here in Oregon, because they were having the first live feed of winter solstice at Newgrange, and it was full sun that day.
Mm.
And I sat on my chair looking at my computer and crying, going, I am witnessing. And Christiana, we don't know who these people were. They weren't Celts. We don't know who these people were over 5,000 years ago. And yet they left this incredible blueprint. And what does it mean? And how can it, how is it relevant today? Is it life, death, and rebirth, you know, above, below, within? But yeah, that's a full, so you can go, if you go online and just Google Newgrange winter solstice, and I think it's 2008, you can watch the whole thing, and then they've got another clip boiling it down to about 10 minutes. But it's really cool to watch, really cool.
Okay. All right, everybody, listen, heads up, check it out. So in terms of more workshops with your Labyrinth, are you going to be doing more in the future, or what do you have any plans in that area?
Absolutely. Well, there were a couple of people from the Labyrinth conference a few weeks ago that said, will you bring it to Philadelphia? Will you bring it to, and I'm not flown with it. I'm not quite sure how to do that. But one of the women told me she just takes hers aboard the airplane, and they let her board it without a fee, or I don't know, because it's heavy. So that's something I need to look at if I'm going to be doing it out of state. But mostly I'm just looking for places that's drivable to me. And in our new community, we moved about an hour west of Portland to a small town called McMinnville. And we love it here. We love it. We love it. And the church that I'm attending is the First Baptist Church, is the most liberal church in the community. And it's American Baptist, not Southern, which I'm certainly learning about. But the minister there, the pastor, she's working on her PhD in like ritual and ceremony, and she is getting the triple spiral bug. So we're looking at a way for me to offer the workshop, probably not till spring, probably March. I do a lot of it in March because it's the third month and St. Patrick's Day. So I'm often busy in March doing this. But she's hoping we can get the triple spiral. This church doesn't really have land, but it's a massive building. And I know there's a big, huge room, which would be really cool to paint it on the floor. So I just love that this church community is excited about it. And I'm doing a big winter solstice ritual theater presentation at that church on December 21st. So we're hoping that will give some more interest. Because these people are not afraid to look at the Trinity in a different way. Yeah. Some people are pretty locked into, no, it's the cross and Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Well, that's great. Yeah. But I'm kind of what does it mean to me?
Yeah. And there's an earlier one, the Mother Maiden Crone, that is definitely predates that one.
Absolutely.
And what was I going to ask you? I was going to ask you something. Oh, could you just speak to, because I found this very interesting, and it was a little point that I had forgotten about, but tell the listeners the facts of solstices and equinoxes. The solstices don't delineate the beginning of something. They are actually in the middle of. So could you because that was something you mentioned during your workshop, and I had actually forgotten that. Because it has to do with
I always laugh. Yeah, so if you go back to the Celtic Wheel of the Year, which was, Western European, which many of us come out of that area of the world, the new year actually began at Halloween, or they call it Samhain, and that's the death of the harvest. Then you move into winter solstice, maybe at 12 o'clock on your clock, if you can picture that, and it's midwinter. So winter actually began at Halloween. And think about it, it's getting darker and darker and colder and colder. And then the winter solstice is when it starts to tip towards the light. Right. So what I love too about Celtic spirituality is those 4 seasons, those 4 points of winter solstice, spring equinox, summer solstice, autumn equinox. In between are what are called cross quarter days. Mm-hmm. So Halloween is between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice. Mm-hmm. So it's a cross quarter day. Between winter solstice And spring equinox is called Imbolc, Imbolc, or Bridget's Day. And that's how it works. So one place I read is that the four seasons of equinoxes and solstices are the doorways to the changing of the seasons. And the cross-quarter days are the hinges of the door.
Got it. That's a great image.
Yeah, I don't know where I read that, but that really spoke to me. And a lot of people, more and more communities are honoring solstice and equinox, and I really love it. And yet I kind of want to get those cross-quarter days in there, you know? And yeah, it goes by threes, you know. There's that three again.
There's that three again. So you got an upcoming tour of Ireland. There's no one else wanting to talk or anything. So can you just in the last couple of 5 minutes or so tell us about your upcoming tour to Ireland?
Absolutely. This will be my 14th tour, which just blows me away. And a couple of years ago, I went ahead and created my own company, so I wasn't going through several markups, you know, of like paying these people. So now I just call the hotels and stuff like that. And then I was introduced to a driver and guide from County Clare, Mr. Paddy Downs, who's just absolutely a brother to me. And so this upcoming one is just the southwest of Ireland. We're calling it the best of the Southwest. Last spring, just last April, we did the wild and rugged Northwest. So part of Celtic spirituality is about place. It's about relating to the landscape. And you can't do that on a tour where you get off and take a picture and get back on the bus. You can't experience it. So I think that's what's different about my tours. And Christiana, there are many, many wonderful sacred site tours to Ireland. There are. What I think is unique about mine is I'm able to keep it small because of those markups. Last year I had 10 people. Most I've ever taken is 24, and that felt like too many. So I aim for 12, 14, you know, in that ballpark. So, and the west of Ireland is my favorite place. Ireland is about the size of Indiana. So I want you to picture Indiana for a moment. So you can imagine you're telling someone, I'm going to Indiana. And as many times what I've been to Ireland 18 times now in 20 years is there's still a lot of it I haven't seen. It just, to me, it's so dense. You know, it's all on one island. The history, the troubles, the brilliance, you know, the music, all of that. It's just small and intense. So in the southwest, we're going to be going down into the Cork area. Our first stop, actually, the first morning of when we officially start, will be at a massive stone circle called the Grange Circle of Stones. Grange just means farm. So New Grange was new farm, and the Grange Circle of Stones. And it's on a farmer's property. And over the years now, one year he had a gate. Then the next year he had a gate with a sign. Then he had a gate with a sign, and here's the cost to get in. It's just a couple of euros. And I mean, his cows go through this stone circle, you know, and which is why I say bring your rubber boots. So that's the very first place we're going to go. And the type of guide that I am, I say, have your experience of the circle first, take your photos later. Because, you know, we tend to want to just go, oh, click, take a picture. I want them to feel the stones. Go to a stone that calls to you. Well, first of all, we make a clockwise pilgrimage procession around the inside of the circle, a welcoming direction. I always say to the group, silently ask permission to enter this circle because we really don't know what happened here. And then when we leave, I tell people to say, what is not mine, I leave behind. And we use our hands to kind of push the energy behind us. And I had some women a couple of years ago come to me a few days later and go, you know, all these problems they're having? I mean, their hair dryers wouldn't work and they were having all these glitches. And somebody said, did you say, what is not mine, I leave behind? And they went, no, we thought that was kind of silly. And I said, well, do what you like.
Yeah.
It was a good laugh. So we'll be doing that. And Tony Christie and I have been emailing. I met him a few years ago in Ireland. And I'm not sure of his availability yet, but I'm really hoping to connect us because we will be down in that Cork area. And then we go down to the Dingle Peninsula, which is just magnificent. And then up to my favorite area, County Clare. And that's where the Cliffs of Moher, St. Bridget's Holywell, I'll take us into a Catholic church that's dedicated to Bridget, who is equal to Patrick. And St. Bridget and St. Patrick are equal in Ireland. We don't hear that so much here, do we? But they're equal in Ireland, and see, Ireland never fell to the Roman Empire at all. So they like to say, and it's true, is that some of those old pagan, for lack of a better word, are still alive there. And that's partly what just love it. It's the ancient, the modern, what's happening today, and how is the landscape mirroring. So I invite people to sometimes journal or meditate on, I'm like right now, I'm looking out my window at a whole bunch of very tall, beautiful Douglas fir trees. And so I would meditate on that. Oh, this one has 3 points. The one I'm looking at right now has 3 distinct points. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean to me? Because what I see in that tree right now is alive in me. And that's part of what Ireland is about place and landscape. The other thing I do is I bring in private people like Tony. One of Ireland's premier storytellers is coming to be with our group one night, and he weaves magical stories about the fae, the fairy people. So that's what I like to do, is bring in private citizens as opposed to somebody with a PhD that's going to tell you about the facts. You can go home and read about the facts, but to have the experience of it, you have to have time at the site. So I'm excited about it. We already have deposits coming in, and this one, there is a married couple, man and woman. So this one will be open to women and men. In the past, if I get to about 8 and it's all women, I usually declare it a women's tour. And, that has its own unique value. And of course, Patty, my bus driver, yeah. I think he loves it when I bring him all women. So yeah, that's coming up this spring, and I offer the land package. That way you're free to use air miles, go early. I know one woman is going to stay on another week, and we're not going to Newgrange on this tour, but some of the people afterwards are going to take the train to Dublin, and then it's just an easy day trip, bus trip to Newgrange and back. So yeah, I'm very excited about it. And April has turned out to be a really good time of year. Ireland's had 2 very wet summers, very, very wet. And tourist season starts May 1st. So once May 1st hits, I mean, it's bumper to bumper tour buses that hold like 40 people. Patty's bus holds like 12 to 20 people. So we also can get in back roads and places that the big buses can't. So yeah, that's what it is. And I'm very excited about it.
Sounds great, Kathleen. Thank you so much. We're out of time. It's been an incredibly enjoyable hour, and lots of juicy information to chew on and share. And thank you so much for sharing yourself and your ministry and your passion with us. Thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely. Blessings to you.
And many continued blessings on your path.
And so it is.
And so it is. You've been listening to the Labyrinth Society's Many Paths, Many Visions, broadcast by Spreaker, with your host, Christiana Britton. Be sure to check the Labyrinth Society website, the Facebook page, and the global group for a list of upcoming dates and guests. Also, if this podcast has piqued your interest in the Labyrinth Society and you'd like more information about membership, please go to www.labyrinthsociety.org/membership. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode, and may you find what you need on your path through life. Namaste.